The days flew by, and suddenly it was the evening of our engagement party. The restaurant looked beautiful. Emma had outdone herself with the decorations. 30 of our closest friends and family members filled the private dining room with warmth and laughter. For a while, everything felt perfect. Then Aunt Patricia pulled me aside during the appetizers. "Elena, honey, I need to tell you something," she said, clutching her wine glass. "Your mother called me yesterday. She was saying awful things about you. Called you an egotist and a terrible daughter for going ahead with this party." My stomach dropped, but before I could respond, other relatives started chiming in. "She called me too," Uncle James said, shaking his head. "Told me not to come because it would hurt Sarah's feelings." Cousin Rachel joined in. "She's been calling everyone, Elena, saying we shouldn't support your selfish behavior because Sarah is suffering from her divorce and her husband's infidelity. She said having this party is like twisting the knife in Sarah's back." Looking around at the confused and hurt faces of my relatives, I knew it was time. The lies had gone on long enough. "Everyone, could I have your attention for a moment?" I stood up, phone in hand. "There's something you all need to hear." The room fell silent as I pressed play on the recording. Michael's voice filled the private dining room, clear and steady, as he detailed Sarah's affairs, the evidence he had collected, and how she had turned everything around to make him look like the villain. He explained how she had manipulated everyone, including their children, to maintain her image as the wronged wife. For the next 15 minutes, you could have heard a pin drop. Aunt Patricia's wine glass stayed frozen halfway to her mouth. Uncle James's fork clattered onto his plate. Cousin Rachel covered her mouth with her hand. "My parents," I said after the recording ended, "they knew everything. They knew the truth about Sarah, but they were still willing to destroy my engagement party to protect her lies. They chose to hurt me again just to keep up appearances for their precious firstborn." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Aunt Patricia stood up and wrapped me in a tight hug. Others followed, offering apologies and support. Even those who had initially sided with my mother were now shaking their heads in disbelief. "Let's focus on what really matters today," Alex announced, raising his glass. "We're here to celebrate our love and our future together." The party continued, warmer and more genuine than before. The truth had cleared the air, and for the first time, I felt truly seen by my extended family. The next morning, my phone rang at 7 a.m. My parents. "How dare you?" Mom's voice was shrill through the speaker. "How dare you humiliate your sister like that, airing our family's dirty laundry in public?" "I didn't dare anything," I replied calmly. "I just revealed the truth you've been trying to hide." What followed was a tirade that would have made a sailor blush. She finally hung up after calling me every horrible name she could think of. Minutes later, my phone started buzzing with messages from Sarah, each text worse than the last, calling me a traitor, a horrible sister, accusing me of being jealous of her my entire life. She even claimed I had orchestrated everything with Michael to ruin her life. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I blocked both my sister's and my parents' numbers. Alex found me later that morning staring at our wedding planning notebook. "You okay?" he asked, sitting beside me. "Actually, yes," I replied, surprised to find I meant it. "I just made some changes to our guest list. It's smaller now, but better. Looking back, I don't regret exposing the truth. I don't regret cutting ties with my parents and Sarah. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you deserve, but that's okay. Alex, Emma, and their parents have shown me what real family love looks like. In 8 months, I'll officially become part of their family, and I couldn't be happier about it. The truth may have cost me my birth family, but it gave me something far more valuable: freedom from their manipulation and the chance to build a life with people who truly love me for who I am, not who they want me to be." The few days after my parents' phone call were surprisingly peaceful. Alex kept saying, "I told you so," with that adorable half smile of his, and I was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, things were changing. Then my phone exploded with Facebook notifications. "Elena, you need to see this," my friend Maya texted, followed by several screenshots of my mother's latest Facebook post. I opened Facebook, and there it was, complete with flower emojis and hearts. As a mother, Nothing brings me more joy than announcing that I will be hosting my youngest daughter Elena's engagement celebration at our family estate. Planning this special day isn't just my duty as a mother, but a labor of love. Every detail will be perfect, from the hand-selected orchid arrangements to the five-star catering, because that's what a devoted mother does for her precious child. I nearly choked on my morning tea. The comments were even worse, Catherine. You're such an incredible mother. Elena is blessed to have you. This is what true maternal dedication looks like. You've always been the most attentive mother I know. And my mother was eating it up, responding to every comment with fake humility. Oh, you're too kind. Just doing what any good mother would do. Being a mother is my greatest blessing. Can you believe this? I showed my phone to Alex, who was preparing breakfast. Well, at least she's excited about it, he offered, sliding a plate of French toast my way. Excited about the attention, you mean? I corrected him. This isn't about me or our engagement. It's about her showing off what a perfect mother she is. As if to prove my point, my mother's next comment popped up, and of course my eldest daughter Sarah will be there. She's such a model of what a married woman should be, truly a beacon of success and family values. I rolled my eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. Of course, I muttered. Heaven forbid she post anything about me without bringing up Saint Sarah. Alex read over my shoulder and squeezed my hand. Hey, look at the bright side. While she's busy playing Mother of the Year on Facebook, we can focus on planning our actual wedding. He was right. Our wedding was set for next spring, and my mother would be occupied with the engagement party happening in 2 months. Maybe this wasn't such a bad arrangement after all. She could have her social media moment, and I could plan my wedding in peace. My phone rang at least 3 times a day with updates from Mom about the engagement party preparations. As much as I hated to admit it, she was really good at this stuff. Every detail was meticulously planned, from the hand-calligraphed invitations to the custom cocktail menu. I actually found myself looking forward to seeing how it would all come together. Your mom called again, Alex said one evening as I got home from work. She wants to know if we prefer the string quartet to play classical or contemporary pieces. I flopped onto our couch, kicking off my heels. At this point, they can play death metal for all I care. At least I don't have to deal with any of it. Speaking of planning, Alex's sister Emma chimed in from where she was sprawled in our armchair with her laptop. I found 3 more bridal boutiques for us to check out this weekend. Emma had become my wedding planning savior. With her experience organizing corporate galas and charity events, she'd taken charge of our wedding details while Mom was consumed with the engagement party. She had better taste than I did, and wasn't afraid to tell me when something looked terrible on me. The wedding plans were coming together beautifully. Alex's parents, David and Grace, came over every Sunday to discuss venues and catering options, always bringing homemade lasagna so we could focus on planning. Their easygoing nature and genuine support felt like a breath of fresh air compared to my family's usual drama. What surprised me even more was how things seemed to be improving with my own parents. During our weekly Saturday dinners, sometimes alone and sometimes with Alex, they actually seemed interested in my life for the first time. How's that research project coming along? Dad would ask, genuinely waiting for my answer instead of immediately switching the conversation to Sarah's latest achievement. Tell us more about how you and Alex met, Mom would say, actually listening to the story. It felt weird. Nice, but weird. Like I'd stepped into some parallel universe where I wasn't just Sarah's little sister but my own person worthy of attention. The days flew by, and suddenly we were just 2 weeks away from the engagement party. I was at my desk reviewing lab data when my phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed on the screen. Elena, you need to come to the house right now, she demanded, her voice tense. It's urgent. I spent the rest of the workday distracted, wondering what could be so urgent about an engagement party that was already planned down to the last detail. As soon as 5 o'clock hit, I grabbed my things and headed to my parents' house. The moment I walked through the front door, I knew something was off. The sound of children's laughter echoed through the house, specifically, the sound of my nephew Jackson and niece Lily, ages 6 and 4. As I rounded the corner to the living room, I saw them running circles around the coffee table, while their mother, my perfect sister Sarah, sat on the couch. Something felt wrong. Sarah lived 3 states away and rarely visited outside of major holidays. The last time she'd shown up unannounced was, well, never. As I moved closer, I noticed Sarah's makeup was smeared, her eyes red and puffy. Mom and Dad sat on either side of her, looking like someone had died. The knot in my stomach tightened. "What's going on?" I asked, setting my purse down. "Sarah, is everything okay?" She let out a choked sob, and Mom wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Dad stared at the floor like it held the secrets of the universe. "I left him," Sarah finally managed between sniffs. "We're getting divorced." I nearly fell into the nearest chair. Sarah and Michael getting divorced? The same Sarah who posted weekly #blessed updates about her perfect marriage on Instagram? The same couple my mother had been shoving in my face as the epitome of marital perfection for the past 8 years? But what happened? I asked carefully. "I thought everything was great between you two." Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes flashing with anger. "It's none of your business, Elena." "God, you always have to stick your nose where it doesn't belong!" I raised my hands in surrender, but before I could apologize, Sarah deflated like a punctured balloon. "He cheated on me," she whispered, dabbing at her eyes with a crumpled tissue. "Multiple times. I found messages on his phone, pictures." Mom made a sympathetic noise and stroked Sarah's hair while Dad continued his intense study of the carpet. I sat there processing, remembering how just last month Mom had been telling everyone at Cousin Rachel's baby shower how Sarah and Michael were relationship goals and how every young couple should look to them as an example. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," I said, and I meant it. Despite our issues, she was still my sister, and this obviously wasn't easy for her. I thought that was it, the big urgent news Mom had called me over for. I was already mentally composing a text to Alex about postponing our dinner plans when Mom cleared her throat. "There's something else, Elena," she said, her voice taking on that tone she used when she was about to say something she knew I wouldn't like. "Your father and I have been talking, and, well, given the circumstances, we think it's best if we cancel the engagement party." With everything Sarah's going through, I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The room started spinning, but I forced myself to stay focused. "Mom, you can't be serious. Everyone's already been invited. Aunt Patricia and Uncle James are flying in from Seattle. The Richardsons are driving up from Atlanta. Grandma Helen already booked her hotel room." That's when Sarah exploded. She jumped up from the couch, mascara streaking down her face, pointing her finger at me like a weapon. "God, you're so selfish, Elena!" she screamed, making her children stop their playing and stare. "My whole life is falling apart. Do you have any idea what it's like to find out your husband's been sleeping with other women? To have to explain to your kids why Daddy isn't coming home? And all you can think about is your stupid party." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Sarah, I'm truly sorry about what happened with Michael. Really, I am. But my engagement has nothing to do with your divorce. These are completely separate events." "Nothing to do with it?" Sarah's voice went up another octave. "I'm your sister. You're supposed to support me. You should have offered to cancel the engagement party yourself the moment you heard about my situation. But no, you're too self-centered to even consider my feelings." I turned to my parents, hoping for some semblance of rationality. "Mom, Dad, please. This is crazy. You can't just cancel everything because Sarah's upset." Mom straightened her spine, putting on what I called her CEO face, the one that meant her decision was final. "Actually, I can. I've already done it. I called the caterer this morning to cancel. The decorations order has been canceled too, and I've started calling the guests to let them know. The engagement celebration is canceled due to an important family matter." The room went silent, except for the sound of Jackson and Lily whispering to each other in the corner. "You did what?" I could hear my voice rising but couldn't control it anymore. "It's my engagement." "You had no right to do this!" "Don't you dare raise your voice at your mother." Dad finally found his voice. "After everything we've done for you, done for me?" I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. "You mean like how you've spent my entire life making me feel second best to Sarah? And now you're literally canceling my engagement party because she's having a hard time? How dare you! I knew you were jealous of me," Sarah shrieked. "But this is a new low." "You know what?" I grabbed my purse. my whole body shaking with rage. You've shown your true colors. This whole thing, the party planning, the sudden interest in my life, it was all just another way to prove that Sarah comes first. Well, congratulations. Message received loud and clear. I stormed out of the house, ignoring their calls for me to come back. The drive home was a blur. When I finally made it back to our apartment, Alex was waiting with a concerned look on his face. Elena, what's wrong? You weren't answering your phone. I collapsed onto our couch and told him everything. Before we could even begin to process it all, my phone started blowing up with messages and calls from relatives. Elena, sweetie, are you okay? We heard about the breakup. We're so sorry. If you need someone to talk to. I sat there staring at my phone in confusion until Aunt Patricia's message made everything click. Your mother told us about the engagement being called off. I know it must be hard watching Sarah go through her divorce while planning your own wedding. Maybe it's for the best to take a break. That's when I understood. Mom hadn't just canceled my engagement party. She'd spun the story to make it look like I was the one having relationship problems. She'd protected herself and Sarah by making me the villain of the story. I was still staring at my phone in disbelief when Alex gently took it from my hands and set it on the coffee table. Hey, he said, pulling me close. Remember what we originally wanted to do before your mom hijacked everything? A small, intimate celebration with the people who actually care about us? He grabbed his own phone and started scrolling through his contacts. And I happen to have a sister who's basically a professional event planner. Alex was already dialing. Emma, we've got a situation. Look, can you help us put together a restaurant party for the original engagement date 2 weeks from now? I could hear Emma's enthusiastic voice through the phone. Are you kidding? I've been wanting to rescue this celebration from Momzilla since day one. Give me an hour. I'll call in some favors. For the first time since leaving my parents' house, I felt myself smile. While Emma worked her magic, I opened my laptop and started drafting a social media post. Dear friends and family, I want to clear up some confusion. Alex and I are still very much engaged and happier than ever. Our engagement celebration will still take place on the originally planned date, but we've decided to move it to a restaurant setting for a more intimate gathering. To those who've already made travel arrangements, we would still love to celebrate with you. Please let me know if you'll be able to attend the revised celebration. With love, Elena. The responses started coming in immediately. Some said they would definitely come, but others had already canceled their flights or made other plans. I grabbed a notepad and started counting confirmed guests. My side of the family had shrunk considerably. Apparently, Mom's phone calls had done their damage, but Alex's family was coming in full force. His parents, Emma, his aunts and uncles, cousins. 30 people? I called Emma back. Hey, we need space for 30 people. Already on it, she replied, and I could hear her typing. I've got 3 restaurants on hold. How do you feel about that Italian place where Alex took you for your first date? I felt tears welling up again, but this time they were happy tears. This was more like what I'd wanted all along. Something meaningful and personal, not my mother's social spectacle. My phone rang the next morning while I was getting ready for work. I saw Michael's name flash across the screen, my sister's husband, or ex-husband now. We'd always gotten along well, often texting about the kids or family gatherings, though we hadn't spoken since Sarah dropped her divorce bombshell. Elena, it's Michael. I heard about your engagement party. I wanted to congratulate you and Alex. I know I won't be able to make it to the restaurant celebration, but I wanted to wish you guys all the best in advance. Before I could stop myself, the words tumbled out. How could you do it, Michael? How could you cheat on my sister? The silence on the other end was deafening. Then Michael let out a strange sound, something between a laugh and a sob. Is that what she told you? His voice was quiet. Elena, I never cheated on your sister, not once. Sarah was the one who had affairs. Multiple affairs. I have proof, messages, hotel receipts, everything. Her latest boyfriend even sent me pictures of them together, thinking I already knew about their relationship. The room started spinning. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. Michael, would you be willing to tell me everything, and would it be okay if I recorded our conversation? Actually, I'd prefer that you did, he replied. I'm tired of being the bad guy in her story. I quickly set up the voice recorder on my phone. For the next hour, Michael laid out the whole ugly truth. Sarah's string of affairs, her gaslighting, her manipulation of everyone around her. He had dates, names, evidence, everything. The days flew by, and suddenly it was the evening of our engagement party. The restaurant looked beautiful. Emma had outdone herself with the decorations. 30 of our closest friends and family members filled the private dining room with warmth and laughter. For a while, everything felt perfect. Then Aunt Patricia pulled me aside during the appetizers. "Elena, honey, I need to tell you something," she said, clutching her wine glass. "Your mother called me yesterday. She was saying awful things about you. Called you an egotist and a terrible daughter for going ahead with this party." My stomach dropped, but before I could respond, other relatives started chiming in. "She called me too," Uncle James said, shaking his head. "Told me not to come because it would hurt Sarah's feelings." Cousin Rachel joined in. "She's been calling everyone, Elena, saying we shouldn't support your selfish behavior because Sarah is suffering from her divorce and her husband's infidelity." She said having this party is like twisting the knife in Sarah's back. Looking around at the confused and hurt faces of my relatives, I knew it was time. The lies had gone on long enough. "Everyone, could I have your attention for a moment?" I stood up, phone in hand. "There's something you all need to hear." The room fell silent as I pressed play on the recording. Michael's voice filled the private dining room, clear and steady, as he detailed Sarah's affairs, the evidence he had collected, and how she had turned everything around to make him look like the villain. He explained how she had manipulated everyone, including their children, to maintain her image as the wronged wife. For the next 15 minutes, you could have heard a pin drop. Aunt Patricia's wine glass stayed frozen halfway to her mouth. Uncle James's fork clattered onto his plate. Cousin Rachel covered her mouth with her hand. "My parents," I said after the recording ended, "they knew everything. They knew the truth about Sarah, but they were still willing to destroy my engagement party to protect her lies. They chose to hurt me again just to keep up appearances for their precious firstborn." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Aunt Patricia stood up and wrapped me in a tight hug. Others followed, offering apologies and support. Even those who had initially sided with my mother were now shaking their heads in disbelief. "Let's focus on what really matters today," Alex announced, raising his glass. "We're here to celebrate our love and our future together." The party continued, warmer and more genuine than before. The truth had cleared the air, and for the first time, I felt truly seen by my extended family. The next morning, my phone rang at 7 a.m. My parents. "How dare you?" Mom's voice was shrill through the speaker. "How dare you humiliate your sister like that, airing our family's dirty laundry in public?" "I didn't dare anything," I replied calmly. "I just revealed the truth you've been trying to hide." What followed was a tirade that would have made a sailor blush. She finally hung up after calling me every horrible name she could think of. Minutes later, my phone started buzzing with messages from Sarah, each text worse than the last, calling me a traitor, a horrible sister, accusing me of being jealous of her my entire life. She even claimed I had orchestrated everything with Michael to ruin her life. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I blocked both my sister's and my parents' numbers. Alex found me later that morning staring at our wedding planning notebook. "You okay?" he asked, sitting beside me. "Actually, yes," I replied, surprised to find I meant it. "I just made some changes to our guest list. It's smaller now, but better. Looking back, I don't regret exposing the truth. I don't regret cutting ties with my parents and Sarah. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you deserve, but that's okay. Alex, Emma, and their parents have shown me what real family love looks like. In 8 months, I'll officially become part of their family, and I couldn't be happier about it. The truth may have cost me my birth family, but it gave me something far more valuable: freedom from their manipulation and the chance to build a life with people who truly love me for who I am, not who they want me to be." Story 2. My name's Isabella, and I'm 21 years old. I just finished my 3rd year at art college, and let me tell you, it's been one hell of a ride. However, you must understand my background before I delve into all of that. I grew up in a house where I never felt at home. My parents, Tom and Sarah, always made it clear that my older sister, Emily, was their golden child. She's 4 years older than me and has always been a thorn in my side from the day I was born. Emily appeared to despise me. She'd torment me, break my things, and make my life terrible. And my parents, they'd just laugh it off, saying, "Oh, that's just how sisters are." But it wasn't normal. I remember when I was 14, I had this huge crush on a boy at school. I thought he was the cutest thing ever, and his name was Jake. I'd spend hours drawing portraits of him in secret, hiding them under my mattress where I thought no one would find them. But Emily found them. And you know what she did? She displayed them for everyone to see by pinning them to the school bulletin board. I vividly recall coming into school that day. The laughter, the pointing, the whispers. It seemed like the whole world was tumbling down around me and Jake. He walked up to me all embarrassed and stuttering. "I saw the drawings, Isabella. Look, you're sweet and all, but I don't like you that way." That day, I sobbed as I ran home. My parents were in the kitchen when I burst through the door, tears streaming down my face. "Dad! Mom!" I was humiliated at school by Emily. She found my secret sketches but before I could finish, Emily waltzed in, a smug look on her face. She used the nickname, "Oh, come on, Izzy." I hated. "It was just a bit of fun. Not my fault you can't take a joke. You are aware of what my parents did?" They laughed. "They actually laughed, sweetie," my mother remarked, blotting her eyes with laughter. "You really need to toughen up. It's not Emily's fault. You're such a crybaby." That's why when I got accepted into art college, I was over the moon. It was my ticket out of that house. Get away from the continual belittling and ridicule. In other words, the only person who ever truly loved me was my grandmother. She was the one who informed me I had potential and supported my artwork. When I got admitted, she insisted on paying for my tuition. "Isabella," she said, her eyes twinkling, "you've got a gift. Nobody should be able to convince you otherwise. I'll see to it that you receive the education you are due." She covered everything for 3 years. My tuition, my supplies, even little more for living expenses. But then, shortly before my last year, she got sick. I recall holding her weak hand while I sat by her bedside. She looked at me with those loving eyes of hers and said, "Isabella, my darling, I'm very proud of you. You're going to do big things." Then she turned to my parents, who were standing at the foot of the bed. "I need you to make me a promise, Sarah and Tom. Promise me you'll pay for Isabella's last year. She needs to finish her studies." My parents nodded seriously. "Naturally, Mom," my dad said. "We promise." Grandma died a week later at the reading of her will. We learned that she left her jewels to Emily and me, and her home to my dad. Emily, of course, instantly snatched the diamond tiara. "I'll accept this," she declared. "I'll give the ring to Isabella. She doesn't care about jewelry anyway, right, Izzy?" I refrained from arguing. She was correct. Jewelry didn't really appeal to me, so I took the diamond ring and put it in a safety deposit box at the bank. In college, I rapidly established friends. There was Zoe, a punk rocker with a penchant for abstract painting, and Marcus, a quiet person who could build sculptures that took a breath away. They didn't care about my family drama. To them, I was just Isabella, the girl who could paint like nobody's business. "Bella, hello." Using the moniker I genuinely loved, Zoe commented one day, "There's a tattoo parlor downtown looking for someone to draw designs. You ought to submit an application." I was hesitant at first. My folks would flip if they realized I was working in a tattoo business. However, I reasoned that I shouldn't give a damn about their opinions. So I applied, and to my amazement, I got the job. After seeing my portfolio, the proprietor, Mike, a muscular man with more than skin, declared, "You're hired, kid." In my life, for the first time, I was making money on my own. I had it, even though it wasn't much. I kept it a secret from Emily and my parents. Emily's derisive voice was already audible to me. "Oh, Izzy is doing drawings for gangsters right now. How adorable." I was a good fit for college life. I pushed myself into my studies, trying to make my grandma pleased. My lecturers liked my work, and I even won a few little competitions. More significantly, though, I was content. Years passed quickly, and before I knew it, I was wrapping things up. I'm in my 3rd year. The summer vacation was drawing near. My stomach was filled with a familiar dread. I needed to return home. I stepped into chaos as soon as I opened the door. There were lots of people in the living room, all moving around excitedly. Emily stood in the middle of it all, holding up a white dress with a smile on her face. My mother spotted me first. "Oh, Isabella," she said. Her smile wavered a little. "You're at home. We didn't anticipate you arriving so quickly." Stunned, I stood there. "Emily's getting married." "When? When did this happen?" Emily looked across at me, her smile turning into a smirk. "Oh, didn't anyone tell you? I suppose the preparations have kept us all quite busy." We must have forgotten about it. It seemed as though someone had hit me in the stomach. My own sister was getting married, and no one had even bothered to tell me. Who was the fortunate one? Trying to stabilize my son, I managed to ask. "It's Richard," Emily said, bringing forward a tall, attractive man I had not previously seen. "Isn't he dreamy?" Richard smiled politely at me and held out his hand. "Isabella, nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you." I shook his hand, wondering what exactly he'd heard. Nothing positive, presumably. Knowing Emily, I awoke the following morning to the sound of animated conversation coming from downstairs. At the breakfast table, Emily was presiding over our parents and a few of her bridesmaids. I overheard them talking and discovered that Emily had ended her relationship with her ex-boyfriend at our parents' request. He had apparently been mingled with a hazardous group of people. "We are grateful that you heard us, my love," Mom murmured, stroking Emily's hand. "Richard's family is quite wealthy, and he is a much better fit for you." It was impossible for me not to roll my eyes. They cared about it, of course. Emily turned to grin at me and said, "Talking about Richard. He's bringing me out to supper tonight. Not that you'd know anything about that. He still hasn't found a boyfriend at this time." As they all laughed, I clenched my fists around my coffee mug and forced myself not to cry. There are certain things that never change. I made an effort to avoid getting in anyone's way as the days went by. I stayed in my room most of the time, drawing and counting down the days until I could get out. However, I was unable to skip the family meal one evening. Emily delivered her bombshell as we were all sat around the table. Grandma said, "I've decided to wear her tiara to the wedding. With my dress, it will look fantastic." "Well, what a great idea!" Mom cried out. Emily wasn't finished. "However, do you know what might improve it even further?" "Oh, well, I'm not sure if I'd have a piece to match it." A ring. Halfway to my lips, I froze my fork. I knew precisely where this was headed. Mom's eyes glowed. "Yes, exactly. Isabella, Grandma left you a ring, didn't she?" I nodded slowly as my stomach began to get uneasy. Emily clapped her hands together and exclaimed, "Well, there you go. Izzy, would you mind lending me the ring for the wedding?" I set my fork down. "How long can you borrow?" Emily laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine. "Izzy, you're so dumb. You'll give it to me for keeps, after all." However, Grandma left that up to me, though. I objected weakly. "Isabella, hurry up," Dad said, his voice severe. "Don't be selfish. Today is the day of your sister's wedding. Hoping to see someone?" I glanced around the table. Anyone on my side, but all I saw were eager faces waiting for me to give in. As usual, "Isabella," Dad stated in a chilly tone, "we won't cover your last year of college until you give your sister the ring." There was silence in the room. What I was hearing was unbelievable, however. "But, Granny, you made a commitment." With tears in my eyes, I whispered. Emily chuckled harshly. "Oh, please." Promises made to a half-wit mature lady are of no importance to anyone. I got up so quickly that my chair toppled over. "You have no right to speak that way about Grandma." I yelled. "That's sufficient!" Dad gave Isabella a shout. "Either your schooling or the ring is up to you. Make a choice." I examined their faces. Dad's rage, Mom's disappointment, Emily, smug contentment. I realized then that I had lost once more. I removed the necklace that held the key to my safety deposit box with trembling hands. The morning following the ring incident, I gave it to Emily. Emily was cornered in the kitchen by me. "What time is your wedding?" Trying to speak steadily, I asked. Emily had a cheeky smirk on her lips as she looked up from her coffee. "The date is the 29th. Why? Are you going to wreck it?" I dismissed her remark. 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks to leave this poisonous place. "No," I said calmly. "I'm going to pay a college pal a visit. I will return in time for the nuptials." For the first time in days, I packed my things and headed out that afternoon to visit my friend Zoe in the next city over. I had the feeling that I could breathe. During the week, Zoe and I went to neighborhood cafes, looked at art galleries, and simply enjoyed each other's company. It was just what I required. But precisely 1 week later, my peaceful moment was upended. I came upon it while perusing my social media feed. Emily's wedding pictures. With my ring gleaming on her finger and a diamond tiara glistening on her head, my sister looked stunning in white. Just married was the caption, off to the Maldives with my hunky husband. I felt as though trembling hands had hit me in the stomach. I called my mother. Why didn't you invite me to the wedding? Emily informed me the wrong date. A lengthy pause ensued. The voice of Dad then entered the line. Isabella, your sister? You weren't welcome there. She claimed you'd spoil her wonderful day. We believed it was better not to tell you. I had the feeling that I might get sick. How could you harm me like this? I am also your daughter, Mom said. Don't be dramatic. After all, you didn't really want to be there, did you? My entire body trembled with hurt and rage as I hung up. When I got home a few days later, I discovered Emily had also come back from her honeymoon. Her parents were gathered together, perusing housing listings. When I entered the living room, when I cleared my throat, everyone looked up. Remember my tuition, I said in a low voice. If I handed Emily the ring, you would cover my final year's expenses. Dad moved apprehensively. In fact, Isabella, we've made the decision to put that money toward Emily's apartment down payment. The floor seemed to have fallen out from under me. However, you made a pledge. You vowed to your grandmother, Mom responded dismissively. Plans change. Emily is more in need of it. You can work something out, I'm sure. Before I realized what I was doing, Emily was still laughing. A mean, demeaning sound that made my fury boil. I grabbed a handful of her hair and pounced at her. Everyone started yelling as Emily screamed. Dad pulled me away, his cheeks flushed with rage. That's sufficient. He let forth a shout. Isabella, leave this home immediately! I slammed the front door behind me as I hurried to my room, packed some things in a bag, and left. When I was leaving the house, my cheeks were moist with tears and my heart was racing. I came to a realization. For days, I felt lost and devastated when I returned to Zoe's apartment. I alternated between sobbing and looking at the walls of her guest room, hardly leaving it. Despite Zoe's best efforts to console me, I was distraught. A week went by in this fog of hopelessness. Then, one morning, while idly going through my emails, I came across a note that broke my heart. Well done. The yearly art school competition has been won by you. A complete scholarship for your last year of study is part of your reward. Unbelieving my eyes, I read the email 3 times. Then I screamed, and Zoe started to flee. With tears of joy running down my cheeks, I pushed my phone at her. I prevailed. I was awarded a scholarship. I can complete my education. As Zoe read the email, her eyes grew wide. Then she drew me into an embrace that crushed my bones. Bella, oh my God, this is incredible. For the first time in weeks, I had a glimmer of optimism I could finish my degree without my parents' aid. I could do it on my own. I pushed myself into my studies with newfound enthusiasm when the new semester began. I hardly had time to consider my family's problems because of my schoolwork and part-time employment at the tattoo parlor. After several months, I gradually began to recover. My classmate Jake, who worked part-time at a nearby pawn shop, and I were hanging around one day. He made a comment that drew my attention while we were discussing our day. You won't believe what occurred during my shift today, he remarked. I have never seen a more exquisite diamond ring and necklace than the one this girl brought in. It must have been quite valuable. A beat skipped in my chest. How did she appear? Trying to seem informal, I asked. The lady Jake described sounded just like Emily. Could you please sketch the jewelry? With my hands trembling a little, I asked. Jake obeyed despite his perplexed expression. I was confirming my assumptions as I watched him draw. The jewelry was the one Emily had always talked about. What about the ring? The ring belonged to my grandma, I said, dry-mouthed. Jake, could you please provide me with the pawn shop surveillance footage? Jake eventually agreed, perhaps seeing the despair in my gaze. I'll see what I can do, all right. Jake gave me a USB disk a few days later. But you didn't get this from me? He continued. All right? With shaking hands, I hurried back to my dorm room after giving an appreciative nod. I opened the video file after plugging in the drive. There was Emily, clear as day, handing over the jewelry. However, what transpired next left me speechless. She was about to walk away when a man walked into the picture. Emily embraced him and gave him a passionate kiss. Richard wasn't the one. The man turned slightly in dismay, and I moved closer to the screen, my heart racing. I knew who he was. It was Emily's ex-boyfriend, whom our parents had forced her to split from due to his involvement in illegal activities. I reclined, my head spinning. Emily was reportedly cheating on her husband with her criminal ex-boyfriend and had pawned her valuable valuables, including my grandmother's ring. A part of me wanted to email my parents this video right now, to Richard, to all those who had ever fallen for Emily's falsehoods. But I hesitated in another way. It was a huge one, too enormous to take rash action on. After several months, I believed that my family's drama was behind me. Then my phone rang without warning. It was my mother, Sister Isabella, and Aunt Lisa. She chirped, her voice full of joy. "Darling, I have wonderful news. Your sister is expecting a child. Is it not unbelievable? Next week is their big announcement celebration. Isn't it thrilling?" My heart fell. Naturally, I had not received an invitation to another family gathering. "Aunt Lisa, that's fantastic. Thank you for informing me." I hung up and sat on my bed, feeling torn. I wanted to ignore it and keep severing my relationship with my poisonous family. But another aspect of myself, the portion that retained the nearby pawn shop's footage, this may be my opportunity. I was standing outside my parents' house a week later. I could hear conversations and laughing coming from the cars along the road. I inhaled deeply before approaching the front door and ringing the bell. The door was opened by Mom, her grin rapidly disappearing as she spotted me. "What are you doing here, Isabella?" Shoving past her, I entered the living area. As others began to notice me, the commotion subsided. Emily, standing in the center of the room with Richard, looked like she'd seen a ghost. "Why is she in this place?" Emily gave a hiss. The room echoed with Dad's speech. "Isabella, leave this house right away. This is not a place for you." Among the visitors, there were confused whispers. I noticed Richard's parents looking at each other anxiously. Mom, always one for saving. Fake grin painted on the face. "I apologize to all of you. We've had to keep Isabella at a distance. She has grown incredibly avaricious and unworthy of our family's reputation." Arguments erupted in the room. While some family members supported my parents, others stood up for me. I spoke louder. "I want to share something." The room gradually became silent. Everyone was watching me. I looked across at Emily. "Congratulations on a successful pregnancy. However, I must inquire as to why you do not wear Grandma's ring and tiara." Emily's complexion turned white. Her mother-in-law raised her voice. "I haven't seen that lovely ring in a long time, now that you bring it up. Emily, please." "What location is it?" Emily stumbled. I had them restored. They had to be cleaned." I took out my phone and nodded gently. "I have a video here that gives a different tale, so that's intriguing." Emily's face lost color when I plugged my phone into the TV. The pawn shop surveillance footage started to play. Emily was pawning the jewels, and she was as transparent as day. Then came the moment when Emily threw herself into the arms of a man who was very clearly not Richard, causing everyone in the room to gasp, kissing him passionately. When the video came to a close, the living room was in a state of chaos. Richard turned to Emily, his face twisted with anguish and anger. "What is this, Emily? Who is that man?" he yelled. His voice broke. Emily started crying, her mascara running down her cheeks. I can clarify." With a stern tone, Richard's mother spoke up. "Emily, I believe we should all be given an explanation." Richard's father, a severe-looking man, spoke up. "I believe a paternity test is urgently needed." As accusations flew and tempers heated, I discreetly slipped out of the home. I had fulfilled my destiny. The facts were out, and I felt as though a burden had been lifted for the first time in years. Over the course of the following several weeks, the family gossip revealed the entire scope of Emily's deceit. I found out that, behind Richard's back, she had been meeting up with her ex-boyfriend, the one with criminal ties. In order to pay off Richard's bills, she even pawned her jewels and spent his money on him. The last nail in the coffin was the paternity test results. Richard did not own the baby. Her ex-boyfriend owned it. Richard, devastated, understandably, filed for a divorce. He filed a large lawsuit against Emily, claiming money fraud and emotional harm. Her former partner disappeared without a trace after finding out about the pregnancy, leaving Emily to deal with the fallout on her alone. My parents, who had always held Emily in high regard, had to confront the harsh truth of what she had done. To assist Emily in paying the compensation, they had to take out a sizable loan. Richard made a demand. They had to pick up the pieces after their golden child fell from grace. In a bizarre turn of circumstances, they attempted to place all the responsibility on me. Mom's voice was angry and resentful when she left a message on my phone. "Are you content now, Isabella? Your sister's life has been damaged by you. I hope you feel proud of who you are." I didn't reply and erased the message. I could no longer be harmed by their words. For my part, I went back to school, devoted myself to my studies, and concentrated on creating the life I had always desired. I changed my email address and phone number, and I stopped talking to my family. At last, the poisonous cycle was ended. It's been 2 years since that terrible day when I uncovered Emily's falsehoods. I received honors when I graduated from art college. My final piece, winning accolades from both teachers and local art reviewers. Now, aged 23, I'm working at the Harmony Art Gallery in the city. It's a dream come true. Every day, I am surrounded by stunning pieces of art, assist in curating shows, and even plan events for upcoming artists. That's not all, though. In my spare time, I've begun painting, and to my astonishment and joy, many collectors have expressed interest in my work. Even though I still draw tattoos in my free time, I haven't forgotten my origins. It has developed into a treasured pastime that serves as a reminder of my progress and a link to the past. I always smile when I see that some of my designs have even appeared in tattoo publications. The situation with my family is a complex one. A few aunts and cousins who supported me during the aftermath are still in contact with me. They keep me updated on the family issues, though I try not to let it affect me anymore. I've heard that Emily continues to live with our parents. She's jobless, attempting to raise her child alone. She is under continual pressure from her parents, who are struggling financially, to get a job and move out. The disputes are frequent and nasty. I've reportedly not spoken to Emily or my parents since that day. In the beginning, they made several attempts to get in touch. Voicemails filled with anger and guilt-tripping sentiments. However, I remained steadfast in my choice to sever relations. They eventually gave up trying. On a more positive note, I've spent the last year dating a fantastic man named Alex. I met him at a gallery event. He is a graphic designer. He's kind, supportive, and best of all, he understands my passion for art. We're discussing moving in together shortly. One more step in creating the life I desire. Story 3. Polly is my name. I was sitting just out of sight at the top of the stairs. Their voices, tangled like a bunch of knotted shoelaces, were audible to me in the kitchen. Mom and Frank, who suddenly appeared in our life like a low-rent Superman, without the cape and all the positive attributes. "She's my daughter, Frank," I heard Mom say, a tremor seeping into her voice like it was attempting to tiptoe around him. "Look, Sheila, I didn't sign up for this, you know. It's bad enough I gotta deal with this home being a disaster, as well as your cooking." He complained so loudly that I could clearly hear what he was saying. Now that I'm expecting my own child, I need to consider that. Not this. Say it. Mom dared him. Quieter now. "Frank, tell me what you mean." He gave a snort. "We're not hanging on this leech of yours." "Who is she?" "Just a mouth to feed someone. There is no tie between us. She just must leave." Mom exhaled, long and sorrowful, like the air itself was heavy with regret. Where would she go, though? My heart felt like a target for blows. Furthermore, Frank was the type of person who was always swinging. How about her aunt? What is the name of his sister? Linda, the deceased man. However, no buts. Sheila, you're always so tender, geez. She is, isn't she, family? Let her take care of the child. As someone tapped a number on the phone, there was a soft beep, and I had to strain my ears to hear the others. Yes. Hello, Linda. Frank here. Yes. You are going to do me a favor. Got a bit of an issue. No, it's not a health issue. The child is the focus. The daughter of Sheila. I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing they could just disappear into the worn carpet beneath me. Indeed, Polly. Frank spoke in a rough, irritated tone. Look, here's the deal. She will be moving in with you. What? No, don't stress over it. She's almost undetectable anyhow. Won't even know she's there. Mom's shuffling steps were audible to me, as if she were fidgeting or pacing, likely wringing her hands in the manner she always did when she was feeling conflicted about something. Linda. Sheila is here. Yes, I am aware of that. We're in a difficult situation. With the baby on the way, I can't. The following voice. Like the night she used to prepare her overdone roasts, Aunt Linda's slashed through the line with a chilly, sharp edge. All right, I'll have her. But I'm not operating a charity here. Sheila, you better keep sending checks. I could practically see Mom suffering, even from my seat. It's finished. Knowing the rest of my things in that duffel bag weren't half as important as those checks to Aunt Linda. Footsteps banged towards the stairs and I scampered up and into my room. The sound of the impending farewell was almost muffled by the thunderous heartbeat in my chest. Not gently, Mom, as though I might be broken by the force of her own hand. Sweetheart. She started pushing the door open, her face all twisted in a way that let you know that I'm sorry was coming before. Ward left, her lips. You will spend some time with Aunt Linda. I stood there, my arms tied around that duffel bag, like it was the only thing I had left in the whole sorry world, because maybe it was with a glance back at the room that had been mine. I stepped out into the dim hallway, Mom trailing behind me like a shadow. I wished I could shake. I didn't even turn to look at her as I walked out the front door. That was simpler. Standing on the porch at Linda looked me up and down as I clutched my duffel bag, each second stretching out like hours. So you're here, Polly? She finally spoke the words flat and hard. Hi, Aunt Linda, I managed to mutter, trying to keep my voice steady. Don't simply stand there. Bring your stuff in. But remember, I ran a tight ship. You'll follow my rules under my roof, she said, turning on her heel and heading inside. I followed her into the house, which had the warmth of an ice cube. Rule 1, no shoes in the home. Park them by the door. Additionally, you dare not drag any dirt in. I keep a clean house. I nodded, slipping off my sneakers and leaving them neatly by the entrance. Rule 2. Lights out by 9 on school evenings. I won't have any late-night gallivanting or foolishness, she said, listing off her rules on her fingers as she went. All right. My voice was little more than a whisper when I spoke. Rule 3. Don't talk back. Don't ask me questions. Just do as you're told, quick and without fuss. Her house was like a museum. Everything in its place and nothing out of line. The living room appeared quite lived in. The sofas were covered with plastic, and I'd bet my last dollar that no one had ever sat on them. And Linda caught my look and snapped. Those are for protection, not for sitting. If I see a crease in them, good luck. I simply nodded once more as I tried to process everything. After a few days, I started to feel as though I was treading carefully and deliberately. I hoped that ID would protect me from her scathing remarks, so I spent my time attempting to blend in. One day I slipped up. As quickly as I could, I poured some milk on the counter. I didn't clean it up quickly enough. This is a puddle, what? And Linda had arrived like a whisper, and her voice was like thunder, creating a mess and wasting food. Linda gave it to me. It's clean now. I tried to convince her that it was only a little spill by showing her the cloth. You think? Apologies. And a cloth solves everything. You think they have the time and money to waste on your clumsiness? No, I started, but she cut me off with a wave of her hand like I needed more problems. As if I had nothing better to do, your mother sent you here, she complained. Even your own mom didn't want you, so why should I? Her remarks struck me right in the chest. Since crying wouldn't make anything better, I stood there firmly, swallowing the pain. I knew it would only become worse if we argued. Aunt Linda was the type of person who never broke the rules, and they were very clear. Not for everyone. Apologies. Not going to happen again. Was the only thing I could escape. You're right, it won't. Because if something like this happens again, we're going to have a bigger problem. Do you hear me? Loud and clear, I replied. My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. Linda enjoyed eating dinner in silence, free from the sound of other people's breathing. I made a conscious effort to chew in silence, as if I wanted to vanish into my room right away. Days flowed into weeks and weeks into months. each as commonplace as the last. I was sitting on my room's carpet one afternoon when I noticed that the fading wallpaper was peeling at the corners. My roommate, Aunt Linda's, was simply another box in the stack. There was nothing like the one I had at Mom's without Linda at the supermarket. I grabbed the cordless phone from its cradle in the living room. My pulse was beating as I put in Mom's number, a pattern I still knew by heart. For years, I would call for takeaway or when a spider was too big for me to manage by myself. The phone kept ringing. She picked up on the fourth. "Yes, Mother, I'm Polly." Before my bravery failed, I blurted out. A pause, a breath, and a sigh were heard. "What are you looking for? I simply miss you." "I don't." Her voice was cut. I repeat, "Don't ever call here again." The line died. Her words gave me a new burden in the pit of my stomach as I stood there, phone in hand. It wasn't simply the rejection that wounded. It was the finality of it. I hope that was significant. From behind me, like a draft in the winter, came Aunt Linda's voice. Startled, I spun, the phone sliding out of my hand just a little. All I wanted to do was speak with her. I said, my voice unable to mask the tremble. She grabbed the phone out of my grasp, her eyes narrow slits. "Are these calls free, in your opinion?" I apologize. "I'll cover the cost." Though I didn't know how Aunt Linda snorted, I stuttered. "Cover the cost. Now with what? You've created enough trouble. I've finished it. Are you finished?" Before I could make a plea, she was barking into the receiver while on the phone. "Yes, Betty, prepare a room. She is on her way to you." Before I could even comprehend what she had said, I was clutching a bus ticket and a hurriedly repacked duffel bag. She dropped me at the bus stop with a shake of her head and a good riddance that followed me aboard the bus. The place I knew was a haze as the bus accompanied me on my route to Grandma's. Mom's voice, the tone I had never heard before, came to mind. The engine's hum was a sharp contrast to the storm inside of me as I pressed my forehead against the call window. Grandma lived in a house that was as old as Aunt Linda's, but twice as comfortable, in a smaller town a few hours away. When I got there, she was standing on the porch. She furrowed her brows in alarm. "Are you all right, Polly?" As I lumbered up the stairs, she asked. I shook my head and Linda sent me away. "Mom doesn't want to talk to me anymore." Grandma let out a sigh and spread her arms wide. I walked into her arms like it was a safe sanctuary. "Families," she whispered, "can be difficult. Enter now. I'll prepare some tea for you." I began to come to the painful realization that sometimes the image of a parent isn't what you get. As I settled down at her kitchen table, surrounded by the cozy aroma of apples and cinnamon, the warmth of the room unfreezing my fingers. And maybe, just maybe, I had to start figuring out how to deal with that. I realized it was a different world, the day I moved into my grandmother's home. The walls were packed with photographs of flora and landscapes, unlike the museums back at Aunt Linda's apartment. Grandma was already singing a song I didn't recognize in the kitchen, which is the center of her house. "Do you need assistance with anything, Gran?" I yelled out as I carried my luggage inside without skipping a beat in her humming. "Nah," she said. "Simply take a seat at the table. Can you cook us some grub?" She used to manage the family's apple orchard, and her voice was hoarse from years of shouting above the sound of farm equipment. The clatter of her ancient pots and pans and the creaking of the porch swing were the loudest noises she had to cope with at the moment. I adapted to her methods as the weeks went by. Get up before the sun comes up, together with breakfast. After that, it's off to school. After school, help around the house. Bed, schoolwork, and dinner. No drama, no frills. Grandma discovered me on the porch swing one chilly day as the sun was sinking, painting the horizon pink and orange. Pulling the opposite side of the swing down with her weight, she replied, "That's something to tell you." I gripped the swing's chains more tightly. Grandma was not one to mince words. Whatever it was, "You know, you're not just going to remain here. This isn't a passing phase." She presented me with several documents. "I've gone ahead and formally announced it. You're mine now for good." I looked at the documents. I was immediately struck by terms like guardianship and custody. She'd done it. "Why do you do this, Gran?" It felt like taking on a weight to me. "A adolescent girl isn't worth the bother. Because of your blood, child. You have spirit beyond anything else. Do you recall? Beneath the strength is tenderness." She touched her chest and repeated her old proverb. "You need to be the toughest right here. For a while, we sat in silence as the swing creaked beneath the darkening sky. Her words encircled me like the comforters on my newly acquired bed upstairs. At last, I said, "Thanks, Gran." That was all. Regards. Even I could hear how cheesy it was. Don't thank me just yet, though. Tomorrow, you'll have to do more weeding. Don't make a mistake. Her tone was playful, but I knew she'd hold me to it. A few days after my sweet 16, I was sitting on the swing and realized that Grandma's house wasn't only a place of refuge. It served as the starting point. And with her backing, I was finally ready to run my race. Grandma stomped the bottom of my bed before the morning sun had even broken the sky. "Rise and shine, Doc," she barked. She had the same morning routine ever since I entered medical school. I groaned, my hands searching for the alarm clock. "Gran, it's not even light outside. World, don't wait for light. Cows are not self-milking, nor do patients heal themselves." There were no cows for her to milk. It was about making a statement, of course. As usual, hospital afternoons were a haze of blaring monitors and white walls. It was already late when I returned, and the home was filled with cozy light. "How did it go?" Poking at something that smelled like bliss, Grandma was at the stove. "Excellent, excellent." I watched her walk around the kitchen while I cleaned my hands at the sink. I was allowed to oversee a little surgery by Dr. Klein. She lifted her eyebrows, a spoon still in her fingers, dripping some sauce. "Is that right? And how'd that feel?" Scary as heck, I conceded. "But I did it, and it went great. You're built of tough material, which is why." She placed the meal on the tiny kitchen table after plating it. "Earned your stripes today? Feels like it." I concurred. After that, we sat on the patio and started eating dinner. Me holding a textbook, she was knitting. It was a calm night. The sole noise, the crickets and the odd turn of a page or clack of needles. She asked suddenly, thinking about Ted. The first boy I brought home was Ted. It seems like a lifetime ago. Not much time for that. I didn't look up from my book at all. It required time and effort to build relationships. "No, I didn't," she said. "You make time for what's important. Life is more than just work and school." I let out a sigh. Gran, perhaps after my residency, knowing it was the best I could do at the moment, she nodded. "Just keep in mind that life is brief." Thinking of how many times I'd heard it, I grinned at what she said. "Remember that being a good doctor is not all you have to offer. You also have a heart that needs to be shared." She reminded me that there was a world outside of medicine in this straightforward manner, which helped me stay grounded. And I would eventually participate in that as well. From then on, we didn't communicate much. As I thought about a future that sounded both wonderful and terrible, the darkness around us in a blanket of calm. I was certain of one thing as the clock approached tomorrow. I confront the future head-on, no matter what it brings. As my grandmother taught me, I should have known when Gran missed breakfast for the third day straight. "It's nothing," she responded, dismissing my worry. However, nothing didn't leave you pallid and worn out. Nothing didn't murmur falsehoods in a voice that shook like an old barn in a storm. The news came as a shock. "It's cancer," the physician informed me. Like the EKG, I wanted was for someone else. The voice was flat. "Anyone else? Are you serious?" I had inquired. I turned from the doctor to Gran, who sat there nodding like she'd known all along. "It's as serious as it gets." She sat up erect, according to Gran. "Don't cry. That squared chin alone." Business was always involved. It was a brief but intense struggle. She would never allow me to see her during all of this. Scared until one peaceful morning when she eventually let go of the battle, the air flowing from her in a soft sigh like she was sinking into a warm bath, and the home seemed empty, like someone had scooped out the middle and left me with a shell. I behaved differently throughout the burial, shaking hands, taking embraces, and listening to whispers that she loved you just as much as she did. They failed to grasp it. Not at all. It wasn't like she was my own. She was everything to me. I lingered after everyone had left, gazing at the coffin while resting on the cool marble. That was too shiny, fresh, and unaltered. "Like I used to do when it was just the two of us in the world," I whispered to Gran. "I promised to make you proud." I ended up in the hospital's hallway the next morning, sterile and disinfectant scented. My hands were solid, my thinking clear. I was supposed to be here, Gran might be gone, but I was still going to help other people. Continue. In surgery, exactly as she would have desired. My hands remained steady. I was a grand strength. Every stitch was an assurance, a monument to her legacy. A loving legacy. Love that didn't end in quiet funeral homes or with final breaths. It was the love that pushed you forward when life kicked you in the teeth. The love that forced you to face each day with your shoulders squared, being aware that you were never truly alone. Mom was always a drama queen. She came running as if she could smell money from miles away. One quiet Sunday, I was enjoying a cup of coffee reading medical magazines when the doorbell rang. They were there when I opened the door, looking like a warped family reunion picture. Before I could even say hello, Mom's hawkish gaze was on me, and she made the request. "You've got to share. It's just." With her hand flapping about like a bird attempting to escape a cage, she declared, "Half is ours by rights." Stepdad simply leaned against the door. His mouth was twitching, his arms folded. He had that expression when he realized his mother had a brilliant idea. Sarah remained silent and continued to go through her phone. I was unable to resist. A chuckle simply erupted. "You, I see. For what purpose? You ejected me when I was 11, last time I looked." Mom's eyes become slitted. "We provided you with a roof, fed you, dressed you. There must be some value in that. Fed, dressed. More akin to hand-me-downs and rations." I mimicked my stepfather by crossing my arms. Bullying was not going to happen to me. Gran, however, nearly a slur, she said, "You were struggling here, and she left you everything." Stepdad stepped forward. "Pay attention. We can all leave this quietly if you just give us what we deserve." I shook my head, feeling a mixture of incredulity and rage. "Graham knew precisely what kind of people you are, which is why she didn't leave you a dime. In fact, do you recall the entire incident with my origins when I was a child? I'm legally not even required to give you the time of day, much less any inheritance, since it turns out that Gran adopted me when I was a baby." Mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish, and she turned as pale as a sheet. "No." Perplexed, Sarah stared up in her face. "Mom, what is she saying?" A dark cloud appeared on Stepdad's face. "We're not getting a damn thing," she says. "That's correct," I said. "I'm not going to give you anything." With a vein swelling in his neck, Stepfather hissed, "You'll regret this." The early light was on my back as I went outside, bracing myself against the doorframe. "Is that dangerous?" my voice stealer inquired. Then I sensed that his shoulders were squared. However, I was no longer 11 and afraid. "It's a pledge." With a gaze that could make milk curdle, Mom took hold of his arm. "Come on." She gave a hiss. I walked back inside and closed the door. In the peaceful home, there was a loud latch click. She left me more than money, but Graham was gone. She gave me the confidence to confront them, and they attempted to rob me of my feeling of value. My neighbors quickly called to let me know. "You should be aware of that type of thing." Ring. That meant trouble. Your mom and her bunch set up camp in your grandma's old house. All worried and a little gossipy, they claimed. That house was mine and mine alone. Grandma made sure of that. The audacity of them thinking they could just move in. Furthermore, nobody would inform me. I knocked on the door louder than I should have and yelled, "Guys, this is not a place to merely crash. It's not a motel here." Mom opened the door with a yank. Her face was plastered with a phony grin. "Polly, we're related." Leaning against the doorframe as if she owned the area, she said. Behind her, Stepdad loomed, his face less kind. "We're not going anywhere. We own this just as much as you do." With that arrogant grin that made my blood boil, he said. I felt the weight of the keys in my pocket and clenched my fists. "I own the house. Lawfully. I'll contact the police if you don't leave within a day." They chuckled. "The sort that makes you irritated." "Yes, of course. Make a police call about your family. It will look fantastic," Stepdad sneered. He crossed his arms across his chest. They gave me no other option, even though I didn't want a scene. They were still there the following morning, kicking back as though they were the property's owners. I called at that point. I could just taste the sour shift in the air when the police arrived. I watched from the window of the living room, arms folded. "You must immediately vacate the premises, ma'am, sir." With his hand close to his belt, one officer said aggressively, "However, she is my daughter." Mom's voice changed to one of desperation as she sought to beg. I'm also her stepfather. Stepfather was added. His job was taken away from him like a storm warning. Not important. The owner of this house wants you gone, but you don't own it. The second police officer spoke out and moved forward. At last, they ceased their laughter. I could see their faces light up as they realized they could no longer bulldoze their way through life. I turned to face the vacant home after remaining motionless until their automobile was only a speck in the distance. After spending too much time underwater, it was like taking a deep breath. There was silence, the calm that results from a storm that has passed and left the sky clean. The air seemed different as soon as I stepped into the home, lighter. Grandma's voice didn't reverberate the way it had previously. I was thinking about that now. Words that sat on top of years of wounds like a bomb. I began to take back the area with every stride. The kitchen where I learned how to bake from my grandmother. The living room where she used tough love and ice cream to soothe my teenage heartaches. And her bedroom, where she would pray for me to make my way in a potentially harsh and merciless world. I was seated at the kitchen table making coffee when the smell filled the room, tying me to this place and this time. To the new day, I lifted my cup. Justice did its job admirably.